messages on the topic of wisdom. And if you may remember, if you were here, the first one was on laziness and how to avoid that. And the second one was on friends. And so for this week, we're going to just look at 5 other topics. And all in all, this is just a sample of what the Bible has to offer about living a wise life. And wisdom is not really so much technique, approach, methodology. Wisdom, according to the Bible, is more about being changed to live as a wise person. And so we want to look at the fear of the Lord tonight, which is the beginning of wisdom. Managing anger. Some of you are thinking, oh, phew, good, that's not me, but, so-and-so. Defeating lust. We all look at the ceiling and the floor. That's a fan favorite. Silencing gossip. Suddenly the room goes quiet. And lastly, using money. And you might think that probably wasn't the best choice of words, because you might say, well, I got no money to use, so that's not me. But it's really our attitude about money, not just using money. Sources of wisdom around the world are many. Wisdom literature like that found in the Bible was common in the ancient world. There were other competing sources of how to live a wise life. There's a lot of similarities, at least superficially, and there's a lot of contradiction between the varying sources in the ancient world. And today we have our equivalent, which is called philosophy. And wisdom literature covers things like the big questions in life. Why is there evil in the world? And it covers the small common sense things like don't wake up your neighbor too early or he'll despise you, and everything in between. And so how do we know which source of wisdom to believe? And when we come to the Bible, we see that the Bible claims to have the true wisdom because it comes from the true source of all wisdom, the maker of the world. Now think for a second. If there was no sin in the world, would you need to be wise? I don't think I would. I think things would go fairly smoothly. Everyone gets along. No one's offending anybody. You're not running out of resources. You're in the Garden of Eden. Everything's great. We need wisdom, though, because although we live in a magnificent world that reflects the beauty of the Creator, and even us people, we're made in the image of God. We reflect magnificent beauty of the Creator. But at the same time, this world reflects the corruption that is in humanity, that humanity brought into the world through sin and rebellion against God. And so because the world is corrupt, is broken, is flawed, we need wisdom to work our way through the challenges of life. And so that brings me to my working definition, which I borrowed from others that I have learned from, and some who have inspired some of these topics in this study. And I've tweaked it a little bit myself, and I used this when I was here in June. And so here's a working definition of biblical wisdom. It has 3 parts. Number 1, what is it? It's competence to navigate life. Because life is complicated. Life is difficult. There are challenges. We live in a broken world. We are broken people and have a sin nature to contend with. Secondly, it's in the best ways. It's not good enough, according to biblical wisdom, to be right. That's a minimum requirement, to be righteous and avoid unrighteousness, to be moral and avoid immorality. That's minimum. That you have to have that for wisdom. Wisdom demands that. But wisdom goes beyond. And wisdom says that among alternative choices that are right, righteous, and moral, some are better than others. Some have different effects. Some have different results. You might have the exact right thing you need to say to a friend. This friend needs to hear a piece of truth. You have this truth. In fact, everybody around is watching the situation and they all think the same thing. Everybody, the consensus out there is that, wow, if so-and-so only did such and such, that problem, would be a whole lot better. And so, do you tell them right now? Do you tell them after they've been on a 12-hour shift? Do you wait? Do you not tell them? Do you candy coat it and have a bunch of good things first? Or do you just go for the jugular and let them have it? Are any of these wrong? No, this is truth your friend needs. Iron sharpens iron. Have at it. But no, wisdom looks for the best way, the best result, the best outcome, not just what's correct or moral or right. And thirdly, true wisdom is always consistent with the source of wisdom, God himself, God's character, what he is like. He's merciful, he's gracious, he's loving. If wisdom is just cold and just and correct and accurate, it's not fully representative of God's character. And of course, anything God reveals as his will for us, well, that's minimum for wisdom as well. So wisdom is competence to navigate life in the best ways according to God's character and will. And tonight we're looking at fearing the Lord. So I have a tagline for each night. Let's say together in red the tagline, which is, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom." Fearing the Lord. So let's jump into this. Here's what we're going to ask tonight, and one or two of these we might go through a lot faster than the others, get us back on track. But first of all, why does this matter? To fear the Lord. Well, our tagline is a bit of a clue. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and wisdom is good for us. Wisdom is helpful. But there might be a few other things to look at as well. Secondly, what is fearing the Lord? It's a bit of an odd term, and I'm a bit hesitant to ask, a friend or a neighbor who's not a Christian, and, have you ever thought about fearing the Lord? Does fearing the Lord appeal to you? Would you like to know more about fearing the Lord? It's not terminology that is as user-friendly as perhaps we'd like it to be. So let's look at, what does the Bible mean about fearing the Lord? Maybe you'll be a little surprised about some of what we find. Thirdly, what does it do for us and in us? How does it change us? And fourthly, how do we develop it? There's a lot of answers to that question. Tonight, we're just going to look at one thing that I have found helpful personally. So what we're going to do for each evening, Lord willing, is we're going to now read the texts that I have selected for the topic. And if you're familiar with Proverbs and wisdom literature in general, here's the thing. Wisdom statements are pithy, short sayings, and they're strewn all over the place, it seems. And if you want to gather them all together from one topic, you have to grab them from here and there and everywhere and bring them all together. Because if you've read Proverbs, you know that not many of the sections are all on the same topic. They sometimes jump from subject to subject. So please forgive how this is about to feel. It might feel a bit like doom scrolling through the Bible. We're not going to hopefully have a negative, laborious time with this, but we do have a number of verses to go through. Let me read them, and I won't read the references. They're on the screen. If you want them, we can have them for later. First, Proverbs 1, in the beginning of the book, chapter 1, verse 7. And here's a few verses on the first question, why does it matter? The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Fools despise wisdom and instruction. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. And now we have wisdom personified in chapter 1. Wisdom shouts in the street, "How long, you naive ones, will you love simplistic thinking? And how long will scoffers delight themselves in scoffing, and fools hate knowledge? When your dread comes like a storm, and your disaster comes like a whirlwind, when distress and anguish come upon you, then they will call on me, but I will not answer. They will seek me diligently, but will not find me, because they hated knowledge and did not choose the fear of the Lord." Now to the New Testament, 1 Peter 1:17. If you address as Father the one who impartially judges according to each one's work, conduct yourselves in fear during the time of your stay on earth. Psalm 33, verse 8. Let all the earth fear the Lord. Let all the inhabitants of the world stand in awe of him. Now for some verses on defining what exactly is the fear of the Lord. First, the words of Jesus, Luke 12. I say to you, my friends, do not be afraid of those who kill the body and after have no more that they can do to you. But I will warn you whom to fear. Fear the one who, after he is killed, has authority to cast into hell. Yes, I tell you, fear him. And then to Acts, regarding the Roman centurion Cornelius, it says about him, he was a devout man and one who feared God with all his household. And he reported to us how he had seen the angel standing in his house and saying, Peter will speak words to you by which you will be saved, you and your household. Peter said, I most certainly understand now that God is not one to show partiality, but in every nation, the man who fears him and does what is right is welcome to him. Back to Psalm 130, but there is forgiveness with you, therefore you are feared. 1 Samuel, only fear the Lord and serve him in truth with all your heart, for consider what great things he has done for you. Proverbs 8, to fear the Lord is to hate evil. I hate pride and arrogance, evil behavior and perverse speech. Into the New Testament, 2 Corinthians 5, for we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ, so that each of us may receive what is due to us for the things done while in the body, whether good or bad. Since then we know what it is to fear the Lord, we try to persuade others. Back to Proverbs 14. In the fear of the Lord there is strong confidence, and his children will have refuge. And then to Acts chapter 9. So the church throughout all Judea and Galilee and Samaria enjoyed peace, being built up and going on in the fear of the Lord and in the comfort of the Holy Spirit. It continued to increase. Job chapter 1, the Lord said to Satan, imagine God saying this about you, have you considered my servant Job? For there's no one like him on the earth, a blameless man and upright, fearing God and turning away from evil. Then Satan answered the Lord, does Job fear God for nothing? Isaiah 11, then a shoot will spring from the stem of Jesse, and a branch from his roots will bear fruit. The Spirit of the Lord will rest on him, the Spirit of wisdom and understanding, the Spirit of counsel and strength, the Spirit of knowledge and the fear of the Lord. And, this is speaking of Messiah, he will delight in the fear of the Lord. And finally, some verses on how to develop our fear of the Lord. Psalm 16 and 8. I have set the Lord continually before me. Because he is at my right hand, I will not be shaken. Over to Ephesians. Paul prayed that Christ may dwell in your hearts through faith, and to know the love of Christ, which surpasses knowledge, that you may be filled up to all the fullness of God. May God bless our time together as we look into these verses a little more. Some words. Okay, so in the Hebrew, the first column, we have a standard typical word for fear. It means to be scared, to be afraid. It sometimes means to have reverence and awe, to be very impressed. It's an emotional reaction to something. And in the Greek, you have pretty much the same word, phobos, which you'll hear the word phobia in English. Phobia is extreme fear. The Greek phobos that it comes from is standard fear, normal fear. You see a lion, you're going to be afraid. That's involuntary, or if there's a threat to some kind of your safety or your security, that's what these words both mean. They pretty much mean the same thing, and due largely to biblical usage or ancient religious texts, they also refer to reverence and awe in the minority usage. Now, here's something interesting. We say the fear of the Lord. And in the Hebrew, it's the fear of Yahweh, his personal name. Now, you probably know that the rabbis and the scribes after centuries and centuries decided that God's personal name, Yahweh, is too sacred to read or say, so they changed the vowel signs on the same four continents to convert the word to Adonai, which means Lord. And so it now is translated in the English Old Testament, the fear of the Lord. And the Greek New Testament has done the same thing, using the word Lord, Kyrios, for fear of the Lord. But underneath, the fear of the Lord is referring to God's personal name. What do we take from that? I would suggest that the fear of the Lord is not a sterile, distant, ritualistic kind of thing. It is a personal, interactive element because it's referring to Yahweh, God's personal covenant-keeping name. Why does it matter to fear the Lord? And we read in Proverbs chapter 1, at the beginning of this book of wisdom and wise sayings, that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. And then a parallel statement that says, fools despise wisdom and instruction. And as Abdu Murray said at your Skeptics Night, I think it was the one earlier this year, the book of Proverbs has been found to be tried and true for 3,000 years. It has some very important wisdom that resonates with real life as we experience it. And what this beginning text says at the beginning of Proverbs is that to fear the Lord is, and I should say that here we have a parallel statement. So knowledge and wisdom and instruction are all one category. And you have one saying that says part of it and another saying that says another part. And the first saying and the second saying are contrasts, but they're all discussing the same category of wisdom, knowledge, and instruction. And the bottom line here is that fearing the Lord, which is relational and is attitudinal, is the gateway to becoming a wise person. And to not fear the Lord, you can be smart and talented, you can have wisdom to navigate certain things, you can be great at your profession, you can be an incredible athlete, you can be a very disciplined person. But to really navigate life